afternoon. I am Megan Kelly, and welcome to NCB's Wars of the World. Today we'll be discussing World War I as we interview participants of the war. Beginning in July of 1914, the war took a terrible toll on most of the world. Citizens and officials alike expected the war to be short, and many called it the war to end all wars. Unfortunately, it was quite the opposite. Today, we have the opportunity to take a closer look at the effects of the war by interviewing the people that faced the war up close. First, I would like to introduce Clarette Martin, a French woman who took over the family business when her husband left for war.
Thank you for having me.
So, Clarette, tell us a little bit about what it was like when your husband left for the war.
Well, at first, it was very exciting. Everyone was eager to take part in the war and be a hero. Well, my husband was 31 at the time, and we had been married for 4 years. I was 27 then. Him and most of our neighbors and friends left to go to the war. There was a buzz inside town for a while, and the whole community seemed to be so sure of themselves and confident. But then after a while, things changed.
When did you realize the war was going to be worse than you thought?
Well, after about the first couple of months, the alliance system began to collapse and things got shook up. Roy sent me letters every week, but he didn't give much away. I think he did not want to worry me. Soon after Germany declared war on Russia, they declared war on us too. It was a scary time. I never thought the war would come so close. Pretty soon there was a stalemate on our northern border and thousands were dying. At home we did not hear the full story, but we knew the losses were great.
Yes, that must have been very difficult. How did your daily tasks change when Roy left?
Well, his family had a family locomotive business. Roy, his brother Maurice, and their father Devereux went off to war, and so myself and their wives had to take over the business with the help of some other wives of the workers. At first it was extremely difficult. Although it was a family business, I knew next to nothing about locomotives and how they worked. At first it was a huge problem, because most of us had no idea what we were doing. Soon though, we figured it out, and were able to keep the business on its feet. It gave me a great sense of pride and meaning that we were needed, and it was my way of contributing to the war. All of the women were proud of their work and what we had taken on and accomplished.
Wow, that sounds like quite a feat. It is so inspiring to see how in a time of need, all of the women were able to take on these foreign tasks and complete them with such precision and efficiency. What was it like when the war was finally over?
It seemed like a lifetime had passed before the war came to an end. Roy was never again the same after he returned. He tried, I know he did, but the weight of what he had seen and endured was just too much. It was like I had lost my husband. People said that the soldiers were mentally ill and could not be cured, but I never believed them. Roy was always there for me, and it broke my heart to see him so distant. After that, our marriage was never the same. From time to time, something would trigger his memory and make him jump in fright as he relived the horrors of the war. I had to remind myself of how lucky I was to have him here with me, when all over the town, families mourned the loss of thousands. When the war ended, I knew that it did not mean the world would be at peace. Even with the physical battle over, the internal battles would last forever. War brings death and destruction, nothing else. I hope that one day this world can see that.
Thank you so much for joining us here today, Clarette. Up next, we will be interviewing a veteran of the war and hear what the battlefront was really like. Stay tuned.
Up next on Wars of the World. Veterans Tell All.
Charlie! Come here, Charlie! Charlie!
Don't you hate coming home to a non-energetic dog after a long day at the grocery store?
Oh my.
I wish I had some phosphoric acid, poultry fat, manganese, sulfate, monotrate, potassium, chloride, sorbic acid dog treats.
You do! With these phosphoric acid, poultry fat, manganese, sulfate, monotrite, potassium chloride, sorbic acid dog treats with peanut butter, your dog will have the energy they need to go throughout the day loving and caring for their owners. Call the number on your screen within the next 20 minutes and you can get a free dog toy.
Awesome! Welcome back. Now we have the pleasure of talking with Mark Howard, an American veteran from World War I.
It is a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Mark, let's begin with when you first entered the war. How did you feel about the war efforts?
Well, at the time, it didn't really matter how I felt or what my opinion was. I knew one of the passengers on the Lusitania, which was sunk by the German U-boats, so for that reason I was ready to fight. Many of my friends also volunteered because we all felt that how the Germans were fighting the war was unfair. Even though I wanted to represent my country, it was very hard to say goodbye to my family. I was only 20 at the time.
What was it like? What did you do?
Well, when we first arrived to the military base, everything was in a daze. Soldiers and weapons were whizzing around me, and I felt so lost. Someone showed me to my tent, which I had to share with 5 other men. It was very cramped. I sat there for a while, and then later in the afternoon, they called everyone together. We began training the next day, and my body was just pushed through every possible obstacle. I came to know the men in my tent well, and we talked about our homes a lot and our families. Everyone bonded really quickly because we had no one else to talk to.
Came war. Did you expect what came? How did your relationships with the other men affect your experience on the battlefield?
Well, I knew the battle would be hard, but I do not think I was prepared for just how hard it was. Everyone was eager and ready to fight and take down the Germans, but it wasn't that simple. When we first got there, we set up camp and prepared our weapons. Soon we were in battle. At first it was exhilarating, but then it was just tiresome. It was not until I saw my friends drop down dead around me that I felt the full effects of war. Once I was hit in the leg with a bullet, and I will never forget that my commander picked me up and carried me to safety. There was such a strong sense of camaraderie among all the soldiers. To see the men that I had trained with and share stories of my life with die right in front of me, nothing can compare.
What about trench warfare? How did the environment in the trenches compare to that of your normal campsites? What was it like to fight in the trenches in such close quarters?
Trench warfare was by far the most horrid thing that any person could picture. I think that is what has given me the most nightmares and frights. We were shoulder to shoulder with the person next to us, so when the person next to you was shot, it was almost paralyzing. Men would fall down all around us, and sometimes you would be the only one standing amidst a row of dead bodies. At night, sleep was impossible. The trenches were infested with rats and bugs of all sorts. There was simply no room to lie down and be comfortable. Food of any sort was scarce. A few times we encountered gas attacks, and the effects were horrifying. One minute a man would be completely alive and healthy next to me, and the next minute he was on the ground dead because he wasn't quick enough to pull off his mask. Trench warfare left a mark on all of us that survived. We would never forget what went down in those trenches.
Lastly, after all that you had been through, what was it like to return home to your family and friends?
Nowadays, you would picture a happy, joyous reunion amongst family, but mine was not. When most of us returned home, we were shunned and hated upon. After everything we had sacrificed, they had no sense of gratitude. The images that haunted us were treated like a disease, and people would steer clear of us on the streets. For those who died, their life was over, but for those who made it home, their lives were over in a way too. War had left its hideous mark on all of the survivors, and I came to loathe anything related in any way to war.
Well, Mark, it certainly has been wonderful talking with you. I know how hard it is to open up about this experience, so thank you for sharing your experiences with our viewers.
Thank you.
As you can see today, this war brought death and ruination to all who stood in its path. In total, the war cost the world about $338 billion. This would lead to much controversy and further disagreements in the future among the leaders of the world. 9 million soldiers were dead and 21 million wounded. All in all, this war was nothing more than a fight for pride that ended in death. Although some countries' intentions were good, the outcomes for everyone who took part in the war was tremendously upsetting and caused a huge setback to the world. Until next time, this is Kate Lewis on NCB's Wars of the World.
Oh, do you believe in life after love?
when you first entered the war.
I knew one of the passengers on the Lucy and Lusitania. One of the passengers on the Lusitania, which was some.
Here with us today.
Shut up, Riley! I'm so sorry.
Pleasure of talking with John Howard. Mark Howard. Why did I keep saying John Howard?
It didn't really matter how I felt.
What's so funny, Jen?
Men would fall all down around us.
On NBC and blah, blah. Dang it!
Send the word over there that the Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming, the drums coming everywhere. So prepare, stay afraid, send the word,